Well, the United States is concerned that North Korea is planning to sell weapons to Russia, including artillery ammunition. Neither the Russians nor the North Koreans are confirming media reports that Kim Jong Un is planning to meet Vladimir Putin this month. Russia's defense minister says plans for joint military exercises with North Korea have been discussed. Heidi Jo Castro has more now for us from Washington, D.C.
The meeting between Kim Jong Un and Vladimir Putin may occur this month, with the North Korean leader traveling by armored train to the Russian coastal city of Vladivostok and potentially from there on to Moscow. The White House said last week that high-level talks between Russia and North Korea were actively advancing, with Putin and Kim exchanging letters about a possible arms deal. The U.S. says that last year, North Korea delivered to Russia infantry rockets and missiles, and Russia has been asking for more since. Russia's defense minister traveled to Pyongyang last month to meet with Kim, and then a North Korean delegation visited Russia in an apparent planning expedition for Kim's possible visit. So what would a potential deal look like? Russia is after artillery and raw materials for its military to sustain its war in Ukraine. And in exchange, North Korea may receive Russian food aid and advanced technology for satellite and nuclear submarine development. U.S. officials warn such a deal between Russia and North Korea would violate UN Security Council resolutions and has vowed to sanction all those involved. Heidi Jo Castro, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Well, let's bring in Bong Youngshik. He's a research fellow at Yonsei University's Institute for North Korean Studies. He joins us now from Seoul. Let's start with Pyongyang's weapons production capability. I've been wondering just how much of a help they could be to the Russians.
Well, it depends on how desperate Russia's situation in the war with Ukraine actually is. The very fact that the Putin government sent the Minister of National Defense to Pyongyang in celebration of the day of the armistice agreement signed, which was in late July, indicates that the Russia situation is quite desperate in demand for additional war materials like the infantry rockets or artillery shells provided by North Korea.
You mentioned Sergei Shoigu's visit there to Pyongyang, where he saw a whole load of missiles on display. How much does North Korea need new military technology? Pyongyang's obviously always trying to show how advanced their weapons are. Is this deal potentially about technology or more about aid?
We have to widen our, web of imagination. The cooperation and the coordination between Moscow and Pyongyang may be various and ongoing. But Russia needs weapons here and now because it has been involved in war in Ukraine. On the other hand, North Korea has a big ambition to develop 5 major strategic weapons as announced in the Party Congress held in January 2019, including military reconnaissance satellites and nuclear-propelled submarines. We have to wait and see whether Putin government is ready to provide such advanced military technology to North Korea in exchange for very conventional weapon system, because the deal is not in favor of Russia.
You say that it's a wait-and-see situation, but when we get to heads of state level, how far along are negotiations? Is this now potentially about sealing the deal if this meeting does take place?
We have to wait and see if the meeting between the two top leaders of Russia and North Korea will actually take place, potentially in Vladivostok. The very fact that the summit meeting is required for these countries to finalize the weapon exchange and trade means that there are a lot of kinks, details to be ironed out and agreed at the very highest level of the governments.
Well, I know back in 2014, North Korea recognized annexed Crimea as Russian territory, right? Presumably then hoping to receive some kind of economic incentive in return. But even the Russians admit that that has not happened. They're not formal allies now, but I understand they have a cooperation agreement of sorts from 2000. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, I mean, they're on the clean slate in terms of agreeing upon exchange and trade of weapons and food as well. So it is very difficult negotiations for both sides to strike a deal. So the most likely scenario would be Russia providing food aid to North Korea, which is benign, and North Korea continue to be aggressive in contemplating weapon deal with Russia.
Well, it feels like Beijing has really led the way in terms of relations with Pyongyang. I've been wondering how Russia is regarded in North Korea. I understand there's been very little coverage of the Ukraine war in the North Korean domestic press.
Right, definitely. And North Korea would be very much interested in the end of the war in Ukraine. In that case, then North Korea may send the laborers to have opportunity to run hard cash from the Ukraine area after the war is over.
Bong Youngshik there, a research fellow at Yonsei University's Institute for North Korean Studies, speaking to us from Seoul. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us here on Al Jazeera.